All right, I'm excited today to talk about driving revenue growth during the pandemic, and I have two special guests with me. Clearly, there's a number of industries that have been driving growth and profitability during the pandemic. The grocery store industry and along with the food and beverage industry have been growing. You've been seeing families stocking up on essentials and familiar brands as they are eating at home now, to escalating shifts towards goods like plant-based foods and consumer shifts towards healthier lifestyles. And in times of crisis, when most industries are slowing, these industries are experiencing record growth, milestone launches, and shifts in operation models. And I'm excited today to welcome two guests who will share how they have driven profitability and the key strategies they are using during this pandemic. First is Chuck. Welcome, Chuck.
Hi.
Please share who you are and a bit about your background.
Yeah, my name is Chuck Muth. I'm the Chief Growth Officer for a plant-based meat company called Beyond Meat. My background is mostly in beverages. I've been here for about 3 years, but I previously worked mostly at Coca-Cola. I actually started as a truck driver for Coke way back when. But my last position at Coke was actually leading the commercial side of their emerging brand unit. So thinking about smaller brands like Zico Coconut Water or Beyond Meat, not Beyond Meat, I'm sorry, Honest Tea. So smaller brands, but fast growing brands that Coke was investing in. So that was, I was there, and then came to Beyond Meat about 3 years ago. The chairman of Beyond Meat is Seth Goldman, who's also the founder of Honest Tea. So that was that connection. Anyway, that's why I'm here.
Great, thank you. And I'd also like to welcome Christine Holland Carvhlo, who I've known for quite a while from our days in Coca-Cola. So please share who you are and a bit about your background.
Hi, so I've been leading commercial strategy for Coca-Cola Canada bottling company. So the operations, sales, production operations side of the business in Canada. It's a new startup bottler, a new franchise that started 2 years ago. So I worked with them pre-transition and into the transition to set them up for success and long-term profitability and sustainability. Prior to that, I had some time with the bottler in California, and I had a decade with the company on the brand side, including the launch of Coke Zero. And in between my two stints at Coke, I had my own consulting business focused on innovation and operations process, integration, M&A, that sort of stuff. So what I'm doing now really kind of brings together both the marketing side and the ops side. Glad to be here.
Thank you. Thank you both for joining. So, I mean, clearly you both have gone through the previous recession, and here we are now in this pandemic. And I'm curious to know what you guys are doing differently to drive profitability at your respective companies, and what that looks like at a high level. Christine, I'll start with you.
So March and April were pretty dim, I have to say. It was a massive decline in the business and a shift. So so we had significant declines due to closures of restaurants, and we had a major shift from our more profitable items, smaller immediate consumption, single serve items, to stock up type items. You think of like a 12 pack or a 24 pack that store easily. And the whole industry was shifting away from multi-pack cans towards more single serve products that are more convenient. So it was a massive shift overnight. And it really forced us to take a look at operations first and streamline where we could and get super efficient, make strategic choices about how we wanted to manage compensation, how we wanted to manage our plants, how we wanted to retool things. So operations first with safety of the employees, and literally daily leadership conversations, I would say, to get to that. And then as things started to, I wouldn't say normalize, but as shopping behavior started to stabilize, at least in grocery and to a lesser extent, small store, we've really had to rethink our business and reshape it to be really good at delivering those packages that consumers want. And interestingly, it's highlighted some things about how we do cost allocations in food service outlets and how we need to think about delivery when those outlets open back up. So from this standpoint, it was really operations first and then consumer. So, the customers are turning to us to fulfill consumer demand and fill shelves where we can. So it's trying to make sure that we set up operations to be able to make and deliver what they want.
Great. I'm curious, and then we'll loop back with some questions here. Chuck, I'm going to turn it over to you and share what Beyond Meat is doing to stand out above the competition in terms of how you're doing things differently when driving profitability.
Yeah, well, we're still a little bit of a young company, so profitability probably isn't the most important metric right now. Sometimes, really a growth company though. We very similar to what Christine said. It's no different. I mean, the business clearly shifted from food service, where a lot of restaurants, unless you have a drive-through capability where you were able to somewhat keep your business in motion. Basically, if you have a sit-down restaurant, only a sit-down restaurant, really put a lot of pressure on them. Also, things like universities, schools, travel locations, all really suffered under the the COVID situation. So like Christine, but very different industries, we had to refocus our energies around where consumers were going to shop and where the business opportunities were. And for us, that of course meant retail too. But the problem immediately surfaced that was an operational problem, is that you have all this production set up for both. We had a pretty even business between food service and retail, but when the food service business slowed down and the retail business accelerated, we had to make an operational shift. So we did do some repacking. We created a new package called a value pack, which worked out really well from a timing perspective, because at the same time we were thinking about doing this, a lot of the meat industry was struggling with COVID in terms of infections in these facilities, and a lot of these factories were struggling with COVID outbreaks around the country that caused supply issues and eventually higher pricing, while we were bringing in better priced items through the value pack and through multi-packs. Like maybe it's my experience at Coke to come out with multi-packs, but we did do that very successfully, and we're able to introduce it to a lot of supermarkets who were welcoming this type of thing because they were looking, again, ways for them to grow their business. So we just had an earnings release. We actually tripled our retail business in Q2. So we were able to ride that growth to overcoming the food service declines that we experienced in Q2. So relatively speaking, and we're in a growth category. I mean, plant-based food in general, specifically plant-based meat, is one of the fastest growing categories in retail and food service. And so we were able to ride that category growth. We actually grew quite a bit faster in the category, but we were able to ride that growth of category, the demand for our types of product, and frankly, the collaboration between the commercial teams and the operations teams, where we had literally, as you did, Christine, daily calls, constant, frequent interactions. How do we work together to figure this thing out? I think that level of collaboration ultimately paid out in terms of us being able to pivot and be able to, manage our business transition from a balanced business to more of a retail business versus and lesser food service.
And clearly, one of the challenges that had to be forecasting, right? I mean, shelves were empty for quite a while. Is there as you think about managing that through that and then looking forward, are there new systems or models that you're putting in place now from the learnings that you've had? Or how are you thinking about that?
I'll go, I guess. Yeah, look, forecasting is absolutely, I've been doing this for a long time, and forecasting is always we take forecasting incredibly seriously. We have multiple meeting connection points during the course of the week between supply chain and sales. I can tell you that our sales organization, their bonus is based on accuracy and forecasting. So they have a core obligation to get that right. Everything flows from that. Everything from operations flows from that accuracy and forecasting. So, as well as our financial forecasting. So we need to have that done right. We take it incredibly seriously. And we didn't have any out of stocks, mainly because we have a very robust operations now. new COO came from Amazon and Tesla, so he knows how to scale. So he's brought in a lot of talent. So we have a talented group in our supply chain. And again, that level of collaboration between sales and commercial and operations supply chain has allowed us to weather this with really no significant out of stocks. And we haven't, if there were out of stocks, it was probably more because the retailer had some supply chain issues internally in terms of picking up their pace because their business was growing quickly too. But from our perspective, from our side, we didn't have any significant out of stock situations.
Okay.
Yeah, ours was a little different. We have had quite a few out of stocks. Partially because, in Canada, it's partially because we have some supply issues with can supplies across the entire industry. So not just Coke, but it's affecting anybody that's in cans because the demand shifted so quickly. Right. And several of the can suppliers had some outages due to some COVID breakouts. So they were down in production for several weeks actually. So once you get into that cycle, it's really hard to get out of it, particularly with demand being so high week after week after week. You just don't have time to rebuild. You would typically take a down cycle heading into the summer as a stockpiling opportunity, but we just didn't have that. So we're continuing to be week to week. We have a very robust forecasting process that our sales leads. And as the bottler, we partner not just with the Coca-Cola company as one of our brand suppliers, but also with Monster, with Evian in Canada, which is Danone, and with Canada Dry, which is KDP in Canada. So so it's the complexity of working with multiple brand owners with a sales force and then balancing what you're able to make. We have had some outages in our plants as well. So that, we were able to redeploy and flex capacity to make up for most, but not all of that. But just it's one thing on top of another. So really what we've done is be very strategic about which products to make and where we need to supply variety versus where we just need to be supplying core products. So we've cut back quite a bit on various flavors of cans. And so in distribution right now, we have basically core cans. So the basics, Coke, Diet Coke, Coke Zero, Sprite, Canada Dry in our case, and relying on PET packages and other multi-pack options for things like Fanta, Barks, the flavor variety that consumers still want, but just trying to vary what our package offering is so that we're still providing choice, but maybe not choice in every single package. So it'll be interesting is coming out of this, in the fourth quarter or early next year, when some of those items may have been, some of those preferred packages in specific flavors may have been out of market for 6+ months, Now we're thinking about how do we think about a re-entry of those, or do we need them? Quite honestly, as of today, I'm not necessarily sure you need them. If you shift consumer behavior towards other packages, do you really need
all those
multiple options of secondary flavors? Yeah, so it's definitely been challenging for sure.
Right. And then also, I'm curious about customer retention. I think you both have different situations going on, right? You've got a 125-year-old brand, and then you've got a relatively new brand, right? And customers really want to purchase from trusted brands that they know, and you're in a pandemic situation, and so I'm curious on kind of the thinking behind and the strategies you've used in terms of customer retention in the marketplace during this pandemic.
What's interesting for us, I think, as we go forward and come, in Canada, they're significantly behind the US in terms of their level of opening up. So, they've taken the summer to allow outside dining for the most part. So, we've looked at the restaurants in particular that are open and ordering from us as kind of the first level of reopening. And we're getting a lot of customer specific requests to work with them on promotions, on social media. How do we help them drive their business and get to stability. And then the next wave is going to come when it gets cold again. If the numbers in Canada they are relatively more stable than the US because they've had a slower opening and more restrictions. But if they have a second wave, if those infection numbers start to climb and they go to a reclosure or back to takeout in the winter, I would expect a second wave of closures. Just most restaurants, particularly not, mom and pop type restaurants, not the big chains. The big chains are mostly doing fine. They don't have that much cash flow to be able to sustain another, 3 to 6 months of going back to just takeout. So I would expect another wave of closures so that by the time we get to next spring, that's going to be your true baseline of, and then we are working on a robust plan of what does it take from both our sales resources and our investment to think about how we help them, how like I said, social media is a big ask. We have a weekly campaign of advertising local promotions, and people are using their own personal Instagrams and Facebooks to be able to do that. We're using the company pages as well to be able to do that. But it's really a different mindset to think entrepreneurially, really, about how we partner with these small businesses. Grocery's grocery, they're going to be fine. They obviously want to drive traffic, but it's really thinking differently about those dine-in places and what they're going to need for the next, up until mid next year really is where we're forecasting getting to a normal.
Right.
Hopefully.
And Chuck?
Well, I forecasted getting normal in June. Apparently that didn't happen.
We started there too.
So maybe it was more prayer. Same thing. I think that, first of all, we're in a good situation in the sense that we are a leading player probably, or leading players in the category that's growing very robustly across all channels. So everyone I think most customers want to be engaged with what we're doing. And so we do have a direct line to most of the key retailers. The food service, similar to what Christine is saying, has been a little different story in that the bigger QSRs that have drive-throughs, they're doing fine. They're maybe not where they were, but they're certainly surviving. Where the struggle comes into sit-down restaurants, which is a lot of times is the mom and pops. And I will say on a personal note, I have a lot of affinity for what they're going through, and we want to, as a company, support them in the best ways we can. So we have run a number of programs to help them as best we can. They're in certain parts of the U.S. and we're in Canada. We're quite large in Canada actually, but we're also in Europe and China and other places. And China, for instance, is opening up, so that's not as big an issue. But in places in Canada and the U.S. and Europe where we've had a lot of closures, there is outdoor dining, but it's not where it was. We're running programs to help them, with programs like home delivery discounts and things like that, to support them in the best way we can. And in most cases, it's not a lot because they're just not open. People aren't eating in their restaurants, so we're doing the best we can. So I would say in terms of customer retention, it's less maybe about that. It is about delaying some things we had planned to happen. And COVID has definitely slowed those plans down. And so, we, like everyone, I think, can't wait for this to be over with so we can start going back to some business as usual. And I always say, coming out of this, that we're all going to appreciate the little things a little bit more.
Right. That's definitely true. Are you guys seeing, clearly you're working with your retail partners, but are you seeing new opportunities open up in like e-commerce or other things that you didn't think of before the pandemic started?
Yeah, I guess I'll start with that one. Yes, absolutely. When my 86-year-old mother is now buying her groceries and getting food delivered at home, the world has changed. So I'm on the board of another company called Vibe Organics, and I learned from them because their e-commerce business grew quite significantly, and I started to really think that through. We had never really focused on it because we're widely available. We're in most supermarkets in the U.S. and Canada. So we felt like we had very easy access. Other companies maybe struggle a little more with that, but we had easy access to our consumer base. They can pretty much buy it lot of places. But COVID has changed my thinking and our thinking on that, and more to come. I can't say too much more about that, but we certainly are paying attention. We know that direct-to-consumer and Amazon and other, Walmart.com and so forth are places that consumers are now going to buy their food and beverages and so forth. So we're not ignorant of that fact, and we're going to respond accordingly. Yeah.
Great.
Yeah,
Exciting. I can't wait.
Like, what's next? Our changes, I think, have been more operational in nature in terms of what we're seeing works well. We had not launched Microsoft Teams yet. We were slated for a April launch over a 60 to 90 day change management intro period. And obviously when things shut down in March, we did it in about a week. And we're really, I would say, largely seamless in terms of how it went. Obviously, everybody has some, personal issues with the folks working at home and cats and children and whatever coming in. Every now and then you have some technology glitches, but for the most part, it's been seamless. Our surveys among our employees show they like it a lot for the most part. There's a few people who have some issues with feeling more isolated, some people who have some family issues that make it difficult, but a significant portion of our employees who work at home really enjoy it and like the flexibility of it. And now that most people have come to some level of balance, see mostly positives in it. So I think it's going to be key for us to think about how do we continue this ongoing. Do we need headquarters facilities, for example? For sure, we don't need to travel like we used to for meetings. We used to have all of our leaders in for a quarterly meeting, and that's going to be done, I believe. Our board of directors is really looking at a variety of options. Obviously, our plants have continued to operate, and our field sales teams continue to be, in the trade, in stores, that sort of thing. But I think the how we work is going to change significantly. The other thing I would say I think is going to change is rethinking delivery, routes to market and delivery. As we have learned, I think we were underestimating the cost of delivering to small outlets, whether that's small stores, like a convenience store, or also, small restaurants. So we will need to rethink how we revamp that going forward. It's just a more expensive channel for us, and we need to either account for that, or we need to figure out a way to make it more profitable going forward. Particularly now that we've reshaped our business to be able to do large packages easily and effectively and cost efficiently, we're going to need to think about that other side of the business as it starts to ramp up and reopen. Those are the big things. I mean, overall, it's been there's always some silver linings, right? And it's quite interesting to be able to see people in a home environment. It makes everybody a little more human, I think. It really encourages some interesting team engagements that I don't know why we didn't do before, but we didn't have a need to, so we didn't. But I think there's some really great team dynamics that are going on in terms of transparency of communication from leadership to our top 50 all the way down to our leaders and their individual teams. So some great creativity that I'd like to see continue.
Yeah. And you teed it up perfectly for my next question. Thank you. So how has this time changed you both as leaders?
Christine, I'll let you go first.
Oh, okay. I think I'm in better touch with my team, both as a group and individually. I'm making a point to connect on a regular basis. You get very busy in the office, I think, going from meeting to meeting to meeting, and it gets in the way sometimes of really taking that time and connecting, and I've prioritized that much higher. I'm surprisingly more efficient, really. I don't know why I'm more efficient, but I am getting more done in between my Zoom calls. And yeah, I think you said it already. It just makes you appreciate the little things. I mean, I have a great appreciation for our ops team that has been just heroic in terms of their flexibility and adaptability, and, you know, really thinking about options. It's really brought to life the culture of our new owners, which is fast and flexible and entrepreneurial. And people have really taken that to heart. So it's been really gratifying to see. And it's, you know, it calls out when you work with a great team, what can be done.
Yeah, you know, and I have mixed. Much of my career, I've done both work remotely as well as worked in an office environment, and I like both for different reasons. And I think working at home, I am more efficient because there's less chit chat, I guess, and more, you know, informed meetings. I think we're also still learning how to deal with it all. For instance, I think sometimes we have too many people on meetings. I mean, it's so easy to invite people now. All of a sudden, you've got 50 people at a meeting, and I'm like, yeah, you know, I just streamline an important meeting we have by cutting about 2/3 of the people out of it, because I think there's a tendency, an over tendency today, for myself, but also people throughout our organization, to over invite. It's too easy to do right now. You put them on a Zoom call, it's so easy to do. So I think we have to still learn and grow from that. I do miss the office environment. I always kid around, you know, if I want to yell at somebody, I'd like to be sitting in front of them when I yell. It's much more effective. Did I lose you guys?
Nope.
Okay. Yeah, and you know, I'm kidding about that, but there is a certain sense of body language and connectivity that I feel like we're missing a little bit by only Zooming. For some reason, I don't know, my days seem so much longer, and
That's true.
I'm in so many more meetings. I don't know why. I just, you know, I felt like I had more time when I traveled, which is crazy, but that's, you know.
I read an article. You're not imagining that. I read a study that basically said that meetings are more efficient on Zoom, but people are feeling the need to fill up the time with more meetings.
And I think
I've also heard that people are just very tired of Zoom.
Yeah.
They're over it.
I have to have a Zoom meeting with my mom every Friday night to have a happy hour with her. So you know, the world has changed. She's on the East Coast, I'm on the West Coast. But I do think, though, that what I said earlier, I think one of the problems that's probably adding to this is the ease of adding people to those meetings. So I think there's need to be something around the efficiency of meetings and what we're doing, because, you know, I think some real work that could be happening is getting tied up into these meetings. So I think there's a nice to have people there and there's a must have people. And I think we need to start eliminating some of the nice to haves. And I think that's a learning from a leader perspective. I will tell you that at Beyond Meat, we have a really good cross-functional team. I mean, we really do work well together. We communicate well. You know, Stuart Kornagi, who you probably know Christine as well, is now our CMO. So we have a very tight group here. I think we don't always agree, but when we disagree, we're upfront about it and we work it through. And we, you know, so I think there's, I do think, in spite of the fact that we can't physically be together, we've actually been able to connect very well. So I don't know. I still hope it ends soon, because I really would like to, you know, get together with some of my colleagues. That would be kind of cool. But
yeah, I agree.
Well, our time is coming to an end, and I just wanted to thank you both. Some great insights on, you know, your operational efficiency and models that you shared with us, and focusing in on the consumer and the great leadership and strategies that you've used with incentives and especially connecting with retailers in the small mom and pop shops and helping them. Just great learnings, and look forward to maybe another one. But thank you so much. Appreciate this time.
Thank you.
Thanks for the invite, Lisa. Good to see you again, Chuck.
Take care, guys.
Bye.
Okay. Bye all.